society, and that's simply not good enough.
When Ducey suggested further investigation, the Mayor, in typical bullish fashion, poured cold water on the idea.
My guess is that for £15,000 you may get 5 days of a relatively senior accountant from a firm of that charging. There's no way they can do what you're asking. What are they going to do with files that will take a month to read? You should all have been accountants, I tell you.
Well, he tends, when he's under pressure, to try and throw something off with sort of a jocular comment, but it didn't wash. I mean, it transpired when I asked him that he hadn't actually read the report. It also transpired from what he said that he'd been very, very badly briefed.
The LDA told dispatchers that by investing in innovation and start-up businesses, there is an element of risk-taking. However, it pointed out that grants were allocated in staged payments to minimise exposure to business failures. The distribution of LDA money means the Mayor is failing to deliver on one of his key duties, regeneration. The Mayor's office has also spent money in other areas with little of the promised benefit to Londoners. Dispatches can show how the Mayor is spending large sums of taxpayers' money on selling his policies, some of which don't even work. In the last full year, he spent around £23 million on advertising and PR. That's more than double what the Scottish executive spends, and £1 million more than Microsoft's UK advertising budget. The policy Livingston is most identified with selling to Londoners is the congestion charge. Anyone who's ever used London's roads will know that congestion has been a problem for many years. In 2003, the Mayor introduced a charge for cars and trucks entering a congestion zone in working hours to try to solve it.
The only reason we're doing congestion charging is so that cars can speed up in London.
According to a GLA press release from 2004, the charge delivers faster, more reliable vehicle journeys and improved bus services. But today, a vast array of data indicates it's not achieving any of this. For example, one recent report using satellite tracking found that London was the slowest city in Europe, with an average traffic speed under 12 miles per hour. The Mayor has cleverly altered the way he sells the congestion charge to take account of this.
When the congestion charge was first introduced, Ken Livingstone made it absolutely clear that this was to reduce congestion. And indeed, in the early days, it clearly did. But there has been some degree of mission creep, I think it's fair to say, since then. And if you listen very carefully to the words that are used today, in fact, what is discussed is traffic reduction, fewer vehicles in the street.
We're 15% down, so that's a good reduction in the number of cars coming into West London.
That isn't quite the same as reducing congestion.
There's a reason the Mayor's keeping quiet about congestion these days. Fewer vehicles does not equal less congestion. TfL's own monitoring report in 2006 observed a long-term background trend of increases in congestion. This view is backed up by those who use the roads. Just ask London's delivery drivers.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing you do, just sit and wait.
Delivery vans like Len's contribute £5 million to the congestion charge every month. But they can't make any more deliveries than they did before it was introduced.
Initially, it did alleviate a small amount of traffic. It was less traffic within the congestion charge. But then over a period of time, I think people have just decided to pay it, and now I don't think it's made a lot of difference at all.
According to Transport for London's own statistics, the charge has only sped up journey times by 2 seconds per kilometre.
It's about 2 hours to do about 18 miles, which is unbelievable.
Worse than the effect on Len's deliveries is what's happened to London's buses in the last 4 years. The congestion charge was designed to get us out of our cars and onto the bus.
Got to try and reduce the number of people driving in, get them onto buses, which is where the vast bulk of the people will switch to, and where we're laying on a huge increase in capacity.
More people are using the bus, but TfL's 2007 figures show that buses are travelling progressively slower every year, reducing their average speed by 11%. One of the other stated aims of the congestion charge was to make money available to reinvest in public transport. However, the charge has failed here too, due to outdated equipment.
It was a very simple, crude scheme technologically to guarantee it would work. The downside of that is it's quite expensive. No surprise there, but it is a fact that more than half the revenues are consumed in the operating costs.
In effect, little of the £8 congestion charge you pay to enter London is fed back into public transport infrastructure. London's transport is hamstrung by a lack of funding.
We've got to mend the roads, we've got to mend the underground, but there isn't enough money there to do everything that Transport for London would like to do.
And how do you think the Mayor's planning to pay for this?
Well, the Mayor, on behalf of London, of course, would like to persuade the national taxpayer to pay for more of it.
So who bails out Transport for London when there's a shortfall of cash? The Mayor would like us all to chip in. I'm now convinced that the Mayor's policies are being missold to Londoners. The Dispatches has discovered a far greater scandal. In the run-up to the 2004 mayoral election, Livingston was required by electoral law to resign his post as mayor during the campaign. The same laws applied to his advisers if they wanted to help him get re-elected. However, some of those closest to Livingston failed to stand down and instead appear to have worked to support him from within City Hall.
We got an email from the Mayor's campaign office saying that we had to prepare briefings as if it were a normal GLA and to prepare them in the same format with the same rigor and so on. And then we were also expected to participate in trying to raise some money and generally encourage people to be as involved in the campaign as possible. So I was asked to raise money for Ken Livingstone from the Asian community.
These emails show that the Ken for London campaign instructed Singh and 2 other advisers to draft articles which were later published in support of the Mayor's re-election campaign. You were writing articles for his campaign, you were raising money for his campaign.
Yes.
You were organising supporters to work on his campaign.
Yes.
All while being paid by the taxpayer.
Yes.
And were you aware at the time, and were others aware, that this was not proper electoral practice?
I think very much so.
But you were a GLA employee?
Yeah, we all were. All of the people in the Mayor's, apart from the 3 people who stepped down, they were all GLA employees. And, clearly we were breaching the electoral guidelines in that respect.
Advisers Neil Coleman and Redmond O'Neill strenuously deny drafting any articles and breaching the electoral guidelines. We invited Ken Livingstone to respond to our specific claims, but he refused on the basis that he believed the programme was partisan and lacked balance. He said that he had not been given adequate time or sufficient detail to be able to respond to the programme's claims. Many of the people that I spoke to in the making of this film shared the same emotion: disappointment. Like me, they began as supporters of Ken Livingstone, but something has gone wrong.
I think the consequences are the missed opportunity of having a strong and an accountable mayor who can represent the whole of London. And that's very important when you're talking about one of the great world-class cities, which is what London is.
Perhaps it's a problem with the institution itself. Maybe anyone who held the post of mayor would have the same difficulties with accountability. But I'm just not convinced that this is the best way to run London.
George in London.